I will call the regular meeting of the Police Commission on Monday, February 14th to order at 5:01 p.m. Let us start with the pledge of allegiance. It's right here.
Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the next item on our agenda this evening is correspondence. However, we do not have any. So we will move on to the next item on our agenda, approval of minutes, December 13th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from the December 13th meeting.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor to approve the minutes of the December 13th, 2021 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda is old business. I do not have any old business. And you all have old business.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. All right. Flying through things here this evening. Next item on our agenda is the Chairpersons Report. That is me. We have a meeting with the Public Safety Subcommittee on this Thursday, February 17th at 8 a.m. It's to discuss our budget request and will be led by Mr. Long as our liaison to the Public Safety Subcommittee. Do you have anything to add for that meeting, Mr. Long?
No, it'll be on local TV, and someone will probably record it in case we miss that. But it's very important for us, that meeting, so you know, you're all welcome to be a part of it.
I will do that.
Good.
I hope everyone else can make it. Our next meeting will be March 14th at 5 p.m. in this room. Our next regular police commission meeting. And that concludes my report. Moving on to the next item is the chief's report.
Okay, so good afternoon. Nice to see everybody. I think very quick report from us. First thing I'd like to report, which is a really good thing, is that we have all of our sworn members back to work. So,
Yay!
So we had, quite a period of people being out injured and people being out sick, and right now we have everybody back and everybody is healthy, so we're very excited about that. And then the second thing is, I just wanted to mention a slight uptick, not just in Simsbury, but in the region for catalytic converter thefts again. So we're seeing those, we're trying to work with those locations where the catalytic converters were stolen from and see how we can help to better protect that from happening in the future. But this is also now, like I said, an uptick regionally.
Are they residential, business, all of the above?
Business, yeah, car dealerships. Yeah. These last ones anyway.
Chief, back to the personnel piece.
Yes.
So of the 39, can you just give us a quick snapshot? Who's in training and
Yeah, absolutely.
Then what's the strength in numbers?
Yeah, so we have 39 current positions are all filled. We have 2 that are in our field training and evaluation program. So they have graduated from the police academy back in late December. They have entered now phase 2 of our 4-phase field training and evaluation program. They have worked through a couple different field training officers. They're performing at about 50 to close to 75% of the required position right now, being evaluated on a daily basis. So those 2 officers are Samantha Rosa and Jeffrey Ballmer. They're doing very well.
And with the latest retirement, our number is now at, what's our total number? Still 39?
We're at 39 right now.
Yeah.
How is the search for an ACO going?
It's going okay, but it's going fairly slow. So we had, it closed I believe it was last week, and we had, I think, 47 or so applicants, which was very good to see. So we're now just going through that process of sorting and trying to figure out, now exactly what our next step is going to be. And hopefully we're getting closer also to fill the administrative assistant position in my
Those are
office.
big shoes to fill.
They are.
Thank you. Okay.
So we do expect, just to follow up on your question, mid-April or so for the two officers to be on a solo capacity, to be out by themselves.
Excellent.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
All right. The next item is the Consolidated Monthly Report for December 2021. Any commentary, discussion, concerns, questions? I notice we do have an increase in incidents overall for the year. We're continuing to grow in incidents.
And Chief, for you, were there any anomalies here that you wanted to highlight?
No, nothing, no anomalies. I mean, there are some things in the Part 1 criminal activity there that is not normal for us. We did report have a homicide in December. The other numbers are down. The medical calls are trending as usual. They're trending up. But otherwise, no, sort of a normal up and down of
Okay.
of a lot of calls and categories. Nothing that was really alarming to me as far as increases or decreases in numbers.
And I noticed our December overtime was pretty high.
Yes. Yeah, by December, we were at 75% expenditure for our overtime.
Okay.
That's pretty typical for December, isn't it?
I'm sorry, not for the month of December, from July through December.
But I mean, with all the holidays that you went through and all the people that were missing,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
pretty on par with what you're expecting.
Well, I would, yeah, with what I was expecting, yes, and especially given the pandemic and everything that sort of fell into place this year, yes, that's what I was expecting. I think more realistically, we're looking more around 60% is sort of what we're looking at by the end of December. So more than halfway because of the holidays toward the end of the calendar year.
And Chief, if you can just give us a quick 30-second snapshot on overtime pay in general. Something that you and I had talked about that caught my ear was just, we're asking for an increase from 250 to 275, but relative to the surrounding towns, our overtime budget is actually quite low. Is that a true statement?
It is a true statement. Yeah, it's considerably less than a lot of our other comparable towns. Yes.
And so, as an example, Glastonbury is like an $800K per year budget.
Yep, they are, and they are much larger than us as far as the number of officers.
Yep.
I believe they're in the low 60s.
How about a comparable town? Like what's
But like a South Windsor or an Avon, yeah, they are considerably higher than we are in overtime. I don't know what their current year budget is, but I know that looking in the year past, in the year before that, it could be upwards of almost 2 times what our overtime budget is.
So are there any like correlations that we can draw regarding, how we're doing business compared to how they're doing business that anything where we can connect the dots and say, okay, this is why this is happening or not?
No, I mean, I think we are extremely, fiscally responsible, with our overtime. But where it seems to be a bit of a deficit to us is when opportunities come up for us to be able to do other community events and such. That we are so conscious over what that overtime budget is, that we're weighing, all the benefits. Where it would just be really nice to be able to send an officer or two to something that was unplanned and beneficial for the community. So with that, that really low budget, it's just a sort of a constant worry. It's always there. If we continue in this pattern for the rest of this year, we'll be looking at over $300,000 in overtime. And that's just out of sort of the normal ups and downs of things that happen. We've had officers who have been injured, we have officers who have had illnesses. And so trying to fill those spots has been very challenging.
Sure, and for budgetary planning purposes, we'll be over 20, we'll be 20% off of our estimated 250, so that's at least, and that's not a good trend.
No, it's not.
One more thing that caught my ear was just the fact that we are, we're farming out a lot of hours to surrounding town officers. Can you just give us an education on how that's playing out?
Sure.
And if that's a smart practice?
Yep. So, oftentimes we have so many private duty jobs, construction jobs, road jobs, and those are paid for by those contractors. They're not paid for by our budget. And so the officers work those either on their day off, or at times they may take a day off, or they work after their shift. If they work a midnight shift, they may work before their shift. And oftentimes this year, last year, the year before, and we expect the next few years, when there's considerable amount of growth in town, that there are too many jobs for our officers to handle. So it wouldn't be uncommon this year and last year to see a neighboring jurisdiction working a road job in our town. Canton, Avon, Suffield, Granby, and they're doing a great job, but it's nice for our officers to be able to work that. Our officers know the ins and the outs of what's happening in town, certain things they know to look for, protocols are different, rules and regulations are different. So it would be nice for our officers to be able to work that. And what we have found is that our pool, that's just another aspect of why our numbers aren't necessarily that sufficient, because the pool to choose from gets very limited. And if we can't fill it with our officers, then we will go outside. We will ask other departments if they're interested in filling it. Can they fill a position? And that's how those departments end up being here.
And is the rate for all these jobs the same? I mean, Company X is paying out of their pot of money, and they're charging for an officer X amount, and that's the same, correct?
So each town has their own rate, and our rate is probably about the norm, comparing to Avon or Canton or Granby, but we would bill them. And now the town of Granby or Canton or Avon is now billing them for that.
Okay.
If I may, in both of those trends, I think this is not novel for this year. I think it was true last year, and to some extent the year before that. And it may be a little heavier this year, but it's been true now for a few years, which is different than before you moved to town. For instance,
Yeah.
it's not your fault. I'm not trying to imply that. But this has happened recently, over the past 4 or 5 years, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better.
So do you have a sense, Chief, of our officers working in other towns similar to the way other officers are working in our town?
Not that often, and these guys may be able to give us a rough idea, but I don't think it's that common that we're working in other towns.
Yeah.
I mean, it does happen, like we do have agreements that we can do that. It rarely happens.
I'm just trying to get a sense of, to reiterate the fact that we have a deficit here that's not just a one-off. This is a multi-year trend where we're paying other officers to come into town that they probably got 90% solution on the policing here, or maybe even 95%, but it's different. It's Simsbury, so that's interesting.
So I have a question. So if we were to look at it in terms of dollars, right, and the cost of hiring the police officers and what we would typically charge, could those two be like offset? Or can those officers be out on the street and still be considered as part of the force, or whatever?
No, those would just be for construction jobs and road jobs. we can't hire them necessarily to come in to fill our shifts. Is that what you're asking, like, for if we have an overtime shift, or if we're
So if they were Simsbury police officers, not the different towns.
Okay,
So
okay.
we would staff our officers to do those jobs. And then that money that we would be charging essentially whoever is responsible for paying the tab for that. Is there a way for us to be able to see if that would make a significant impact on the cost of?
Yeah, so there is a difference. So the officers still get paid their contractual overtime rate. And so for an example, a brand new officer, they may have an overtime rate of X. And we are billing the construction company Z, a higher rate, because we don't know which officer is going to work that, but also that money goes back to the town to help pay for some of the benefits. I believe some workers' comp aspect, potentially some other figures that go into the benefits, but also there's wear and tear on the vehicles, and it helps to support replacement of some things. So if we're hiring outside, or those companies are hiring outside, then none of those excess dollars between X and Z come back to us.
Right.
They then go to the other towns.
So that delta, sorry,
Yes.
so that delta in cost or dollars, Simsbury is losing those
Correct.
because it goes.
Because it goes to the other respective towns. Yeah. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
And the amount of outside work, does that equate to a half a person a year that we're losing out on, or a full person a year?
Interesting question. I don't know. I do know that in years it is significant money.
Something to talk about on Thursday,
Could be close to that.
that we're losing out on revenue by not having enough officers to meet the standard that we're asking for.
So to play the devil's advocate, the bean counter might say, hey, but you're getting them for a part-time rate versus if we had full-time officers that come with a package, a tail, financial tail. And I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that's the devil's probably in the details. I would imagine. Any thoughts on that?
I actually didn't follow that.
So we're getting other officers.
Yes.
And we're losing out on revenue because it's going to other towns.
Yes.
But someone who's not into plussing up the police force here in Simsbury would say, yeah, it's basically like getting part-time work. I understand we're losing a little bit of revenue here, but if we were to have full-time officers with the complete compensation package that comes with a full-time employee, that costs more than someone that's a part-timer from another town. I don't.
That's not
I don't
necessarily
think so.
true.
I don't think it's true. I'm saying that we need to have that arrow in our quiver to say, no, that's not true. This is.
So doesn't the private duty, like you were saying, there's an added cost to cover the insurance, and like when the private duty rate covers part of these extra costs?
Yeah, it goes back to the town.
So in that sense, no.
Yeah. I think I lost you.
We get it.
I'm not sure what's happening over here, but
Hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. Like, there's
You're saying it's
momentum
more
to not
expensive.
hire more
Yes.
officers, and I'm saying we need to build a financial case because we all believe that, hey, we're short.
And the town's also losing money
Correct.
on all those
Yeah.
private duty jobs
Yeah.
we don't get.
All right.
Any
Got
more
it.
conversation on the consolidated monthly report for December? All right, then moving on to the preliminary monthly activity report for January. I think I have a question. What's the difference between a pass check and a patrol check?
So a patrol check is, it's what the patrol officers are doing through their entire shift. They're stopping in, the backside, the front side of businesses, all over. That's what they're doing is patrol checks. They're always looking at buildings. For some reason, they decide, I'm gonna just document this.
Right.
They're not gonna document every one because that's what they're doing generally for the entire 8 hours. Whether there has been a history at a location, a request from somebody to provide some extra attention, maybe something, is just not sitting right with them, so they decide to document that as a patrol check. And those vary, and we have seen over the last maybe 3 or 4 years or longer, like a drastic increase in those documented patrol checks. It's much easier now for the officers. They're in the cruiser with the NVT. Make a really, a couple quick clicks, and they're documenting that they were there at a location. The pass check is specific to our schools.
Oh, okay.
So it's part of our.
Is that like an acronym? Or is it just?
It is, but I can't tell you exactly what it stands for now. Yeah, it was Lieutenant Sheen that came up with the acronym.
Get it back there.
We all know what it means.
We'll say
It means they're
Access
checking our
Simsbury
schools.
schools.
Yeah.
Got it.
So it's part of that
Okay.
Every School, Every Day campaign that we started years ago.
Okay.
So pass checks are specific to our schools.
For the alarms, are those, like the intrusion, are they like false alarms? Or is there actually breaking
So
in?
most all of those are false alarms. Yeah, for the regular alarms. Fortunately for the fire alarms too, most of those are all false alarms. The medical alarms are also mostly all false alarms.
And by chance, are the residents getting billed for those false alarms?
So they are. So after 3 times, they get billed.
And I'm always curious about the 911 hang-up calls.
About the numbers, how high they are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a lot of those. A lot of pocket calls, a lot of mistakes. We get a lot of them.
So, and I know this may be difficult to answer, but maybe not. By chance, do any of those 911 hang-up calls come from any houses or homes that have history of family violence?
Nothing's coming to mind. It's our practice to go to as many of those as we possibly can. Sometimes you can't with a 911 hang up and it's mobile, and it goes out of town and you've lost it, or it doesn't quite connect to an actual location. But for the most part, we go to all of them. That's our effort, is to go to all of them. In most cases, it's a child playing with the phone, or somebody thought they were at work, so they dial 9, and then all sorts of things. Sometimes it's a definite, legitimate call for help.
For every single 911 call that we do get for the 911 hangups, it is kind of practice that we will check the history of that address, if there is any history, to see if there has been any domestic violence or any kind of any pattern of any types of incidents at that residence, at that location. So we will look into that.
I'd like to go back to the checks for just a second. As over the last 10 years, there's been a number of little communities that have developed in Simsbury, up and down Meadow Street, all over the place. Do they get special attention, or I shouldn't say that? Is there any way that they are identified similarly as to school or commercial? That if you go through one of those developments, for instance, is that somehow you check the block, or is it
So all the addresses are in our system.
Right.
So if an officer chose to say document going through Highcroft or Ojakian Commons or Dorset Crossing, they can call that in. With these patrol checks, it's just sort of built into what we do. So there's no mandate that you will do, you will check these or you will document these. At times we do, because of maybe some considerable problems or attention that's required, that we'll say, you have to do 1 per shift if it's documented. But the officers could very easily put those in and as either group locations or even individual homes or businesses.
It depends, obviously, if there's something going on, like Chief said, like the kind of converter thefts. If an officer goes through a business at 2 in the morning and everything looks fine, but the patrol check, now it documents at 2 a.m., there's no issues. Maybe they come back at 4 a.m. and now they find a car up on blocks and, their tires are going on, whatever, and they know, okay, well, can pinpoint in the last 2 hours is when it happened. So, so typically the patrol trucks are more reserved for, or kind of entered in when you know that there's been kind of ongoing issues. You want to document that, hey, I checked it, I know there's been issues, but right now everything's fine. And then later on, so if something does happen, at least they have kind of a, a timestamp as far as when, everything was kind of normal before that, so.
I think it might be interesting and perhaps useful also to add that to those other developments. I don't know what you call them. The multiple family,
Multi-resident homes.
Multi-resident developments. For the same reason, and also that at least in those cases, if you do find a problem that's going on, it's usually a management group, and there's somebody who that information would be useful for them to spread amongst their residents. Whatever, keep your car locked, move it up, do something. It's something new, really, to this town. Over the past 10, 15 years, it didn't exist before. Now there's probably a dozen.
Well, we have that ability to do it now in our current setup.
Yeah.
The reason we did a different term for the schools
is
because we can run a report very simply instead of putting in 34 Farms Village Road and all these specific addresses for all the schools. We can just do pass checks because it's specific to that. But if we were looking for, say, 55 Elm Street, we could put in 55 Elm Street. It would give us all the information for that. It would categorize patrol checks or whatever the case may be, the type of call we were there for.
I would think that might be useful information for you. I'm not sure. But,
so we can do that now. I mean, that, in our current setup, we can do that.
Is it on here anywhere?
No, it's under. It would just be under patrol checks.
We have to look at a specific address to find out the number of times. Like we went to, we did a patrol check at a certain location.
Yeah,
So
because the pass checks includes multiple locations. Because I don't know if there'd be a benefit to figure out, and maybe there is, to figure out like, okay, how many times were we at, say, Dorset, 55L, Hospital, all together? I don't know, because that was the purpose of the pass checks, is to figure out all together, because then it's a quick check to say, okay, did we check 7 times today, or did we check 21 times today in pass checks?
No, nothing on that. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda this evening is new business. We need to appoint our new chairperson and clerk.
We elect those people.
We need to elect. Apologies.
Okay.
All right.
Now, if there's any, let me give you a little historical
Give us the history.
content, which hopefully won't turn into hysterical. But it's a combination of this board is made up of 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 unaffiliated. By charter, that's the way it is. So political affiliation is something that matters, and also with seniority mixed in. It kind of solves things up a bit, but it's a valid way of proceeding. That's the way we have historically gone. So this would say for like the and typically it's a 2-year term, although it's 1 year, 2 1-year terms together. Okay, so typically that's the way it's been. So if I look at the construct of this group for the years 20 and 21 and 22, that is the unaffiliated voters term. 23 and 24 would be Republican. 25, 26 would be Democrat, and so on. But then you mix in seniority in that as well, because typically you wouldn't put we haven't put a first year or even a second year person into a position as chair of a group, and they sit for another year. So things shift a bit. that's the way it's been. So typically, this would be an easy year in terms of, I think, right now, you've been chair for 1 year.
Correct.
So this would be the second year.
Second year.
And so that traditionally would be, your turn again.
Right.
And Terry, you're the clerk, right?
Yeah.
And it would be typically your turn again.
Terry took an extra time because of our former chair retiring from the commission.
Yes.
So this is his 3rd year, correct?
As the clerk.
As the clerk. So, in which case then it would move to Travis as the next candidate for clerk, correct? Based on
That's never happened before, but it could be, or you just in the 3rd year.
well, this would be his 4th.
This is
So-
my 4th year on the
Yeah.
commission.
So that's why we're saying.
4th year as a commission, but how many years as a clerk?
I've done 2 already.
So it would be his
This
3rd.
would be his 3rd year, yes.
Well, whatever.
May I suggest that when Travis become the clerk for this year, as a Republican would take over for next year as the chairperson, this would kind of be like a sleeved-up position.
Well, it may or may not be, depends on, whether seniority or travel schedule, whatever, mix into that. But, whatever. This could be shifted around.
Travis,
Yes.
are you amenable to being the clerk for the 22 year? This year,
For 1 year.
for 1 year.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that,
All right.
I'm amenable.
All right,
Yes.
in that case,
why don't you call for elections?
I would like to call for elections.
I would like to nominate Jenna Caulfield as our chair for the year, this year, the year 22. Travis Schweitzer as our clerk for the year 2022.
I'd like to second that motion.
All right, all in favor of
Closing the nomination?
closing the nominations.
Aye.
And now all in favor of voting for Jenna Caulfield as the chair for the police commission for the year 2022. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor of, it passes. All in favor of Travis to be Travis Schweitzer for clerk for the 2022 police commission year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that passes.
Congratulations.
A lot of words I didn't have written down. I apologize.
All right.
All right. Moving on to our next item, the new business, response to aggression. Everyone got the draft, correct?
Yes.
All right, in that case, I will entertain a motion.
Do what?
To approve the response to aggression, resistance, and custody death investigation. Sure. What is the motion?
I don't know, do we traditionally approve general orders
We have. And then
forever?
forever, well, during my tenure on this commission, we have. I don't know what y'all did before.
Is there, and if we approve it, does it go from draft into, that's
Well, we
the,
have to approve it and then have a discussion, and then once we discuss it, if we all agree, then we can approve it to have it made into an official order to become part of the policy.
so potential edits can be done after approval.
Well, we've got to discuss it.
Roger.
Well, you got 2 approvals in your process. So we should discuss it,
Correct.
and then we should move to approve it.
Yeah. Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
there you go. So it's open for discussion this time.
correct.
All right, excellent. I have nothing to discuss.
Lordy. Commissioner Long, you have any comments? None?
I have no comment.
All right.
I think the other, I think it's very well put together, very well done. I think it satisfied some of the questions that were asked previously about grassroots need. And satisfied with it.
All right.
So,
Commissioner Fogarty.
I have no comments. I thought it was a very clear document.
Okay. Commissioner Swizer.
Just a few happy to glads here. So the section 2, notification, paragraph A and B. The paragraph A is email, and paragraph B is immediate notification. And in the headline there, we say immediate notification in person and phone. Is the reality going to be radio instead of a phone, or will it be phone?
No, it will be phone or in person.
Okay.
So, for instance, during the daytime, it may be an in-person notification. Otherwise, it would be phone. The radio would be very rare to put all the details out over the radio as a notification.
Okay.
If you needed something immediately, then that would be fine. But no, by way of in-person or phone.
Yeah. And then, it's silly, but should paragraph B be in front of paragraph A, where you have immediate notification and then you have email to follow? Or does it matter to you at all?
Well, kind of went with like the lesser serious of the two first, and then the more serious of the two as far as either injury, potential injury, liability, those types of things, the type or use of force.
Paragraph 3, command staff responsibilities, and paragraph 3A3 will cause the officers to be removed from operational assignments. Is that in Simsbury police vernacular? Is operational assignments specific enough, or do we need more specificity?
It is. I think if we were more specific, then it just may be too much detail, and we might have to follow a certain track where I think we have options with this. If a patrol officer, anybody involved in a significant use of force would not be asked to go right back on.
Okay.
And there's an almost immediate assessment of where are they going to go, what are their responsibilities going to be, what do we have to do for them, what do they need.
Fair enough. 3C, command staff responsibilities, and then C is the chief or deputy chief of police will make notification of the town manager and police commission chair. Do we need a time frame associated with that notification, or is that again putting too much constraint on the chief?
I would prefer not to. I mean, if we needed more specificity, it would be like in a timely manner. For instance, you have a major incident.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that need to happen right away, and the priority is taking care of sometimes a lot of other things first, and then the notification as soon as possible. But I would expect that it would be done as soon as possible. But,
yeah.
May I jump in for just a second?
Yeah.
Because all three questions had to do with notifications. And one is certainly by email. There's a record of that somewhere.
Yeah.
A phone call or immediate notification, there may not be a record. And this one, it doesn't say what sort of notification. Email, phone, so that.
And it doesn't give a time. Yeah, it doesn't. It just says you will notify.
Right. I just don't know whether you want to have.
So here, here's a for instance. There's and I hate to use this. There's an in custody death. I prefer not to take the time to write something out to then get to the chair or get to the town manager.
Understand.
Phone call. So there's less documentation right there, but initially there's got to be a phone call because there are some things that need to get done. So, and then if that person says, okay, can you put something in writing, can you document something for me, then that's fine. I just think it's almost that immediacy of you need to know because things are going to happen.
You can't reach the person. A text or an email would still be there, and they would get it at some point. Even if you
sure, yep, sure. Or you move on to the next one, to the next person in line.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that was my thought process with this, and yes, an email is documented, but it's more of the urgency. I don't want an email at 2 o'clock in the morning if I really should know right then and there.
True. But if you can't connect by phone,
Understood, and then, so if they can't get me, then, you know, there's options, and I think there are probably options here as well, but
Fine.
that was just my thought process on
Sure.
that.
sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm throwing it out there for folks to jump on if it makes sense or not. So, Chief, the next one I have is on deadly force, paragraph 5. And some trends nationally that I'm seeing is I'm upset about the lack of anonymity of the police officer once an event happens too early. I mean, obviously, when a case gets investigated and then it becomes public information, it is what it is. But I see nowhere in here about who's authorized to talk to the press or the anonymity of officers, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if we need any kind of a blurb in there to cover down on that.
So with deadly force, it is addressed in one area here about it's actually the last page, second to last page on the public information plan.
Yeah.
So those are investigated by the state's attorney's office and the inspector general. They have control over what should or should not be released in that matter, which would include, you know, the name of the officer. You know, we may have to try to chime in if there's any particular reason why at that particular time it should or should not be released, but us working together on getting information out there. It's important to get a lot of information out at times, and you know, one of us may be pushing, whether it's us or them to get some information out there.
So just as an education, when an incident of significance happens in the town, what is the direction from your desk to the police force on who's authorized to talk to reporters or people in the press and making statements in general, just so I understand it's cohesive in the document up to the state's office?
Yeah. So if we're talking a general incident of interest to people and the media shows up, then it's going to come from us about who can address the media. It may be one of the lieutenants, it may be a sergeant, depending on, because sometimes the press will come up for something that you know is not as demanding or does not need somebody from the command staff to address. If it's a deadly force situation or an incident that resulted in serious physical injury, it's going to come from their office. You know, our officers know they're not to talk to the media unless they're told that they can.
And do we have written guidance in our
We do.
about that, about addressing
We do.
the public?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it limited to the press or just don't talk to anybody about it?
Well, it's both in two different areas.
Okay.
So, you know, the officers do know, and it is written, that information is released through our records function or through the public information officer. And unless Officer A is told they are the public information officer, they are not to release information.
I think I read it somewhere in here too, about in terms of like who gets to speak.
Yeah, it should be in section 10 on page 8 in the public information plan.
I have one more, and that's on the deadly force piece.
Yep.
We've, you know, the paragraphs kind of talk about what happens to the officer, and in the military, both kind of as part of an investigation. Let's take if you had a plane crash, for instance, immediately the pilots would undergo a drug test to rule out, to help their cause or to get to the bottom of what actually happened. And I don't see that we have that. I don't know if that's standard practice nationwide or not, and wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not police should undergo your analysis once we have a deadly force incident.
Sure. So we would have to look to Connecticut specifically because things vary throughout the country, but the state's attorney's office would be looking for that.
And they would direct it if that was.
They would, yeah. Administratively, we do not have a means to necessarily force that, but with the criminal.
And so you don't see our need to put it in our our guiding documents that,
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that there's no administrative need, but that would take some further work
yeah.
for that to happen. Outside of the statutes that already exist about, if you're involved in this, you will provide a specimen to do a criminal aspect. But we're not doing a criminal investigation on our officer's conduct. That would be the state's attorney's office.
Okay, so that would be directed from their office if that wasn't,
Yes,
if that was desired.
correct. Yeah. And in most cases, it would be.
Yeah.
desired.
Okay, I'm clean.
Commissioner Grant? Nope, I don't have anything. All right. Anyone have further discussion? In that case, hearing no further discussion.
You'd like to entertain?
I've got to
motion
remember what
approve?
our initial motion was at this point. I didn't write it down.
No, there hasn't been one yet.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion on the
General Order 4-2.
I like that. General Order 4-2.
I'd like to move the approval of General Order 4-2.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor of approving General Order 4-2? Say aye.
Aye.
The order is approved.
We will make that effective tomorrow. So we'll have time to get that, to disperse that. There's very limited training involved in this, is what we've been practicing and codifying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Our final item of new business.
I'd like to move that we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.